Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the David Icke Connector videocast. Is it the last one of the year, Dad? I'm not entirely sure, actually. I've got my Christmas jumper on, though. Look at that.
Yeah, well, I tried to put a Christmas jumper on, but I have a problem. Since I was a kid, I can't wear anything that's in any way wool or rough. So my potential for Christmas jumpers is tiny because I can only wear smooth things like sweatshirts and stuff. And you can't get many sweatshirt Christmas jumpers. And the only one I had, everything that was on it about Christmas was down here. So I thought, well, that's a waste of bloody time. So I'll leave it to you. But yeah, it's the last one before Christmas. And I'm going to talk later, actually pretty soon, about the Christmas star alignment and what all that means coming up on December the 21st.
It's quite fitting then, Dad, actually, that you can't wear wool, because you would make a rubbish sheep, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe I have an allergy to wool because I'm not a sheep. Maybe that's what it is.
There you go. Talking of sheep, though, before obviously we get into the Grand Conjunction, which I know nothing about, and I keep hearing loads of people talking about it, and I'm dead interested in astrology, but know very little. So this is an education for me, so I'm looking forward to it. But before we start, let's have a little look at some of these vaccine stories this week. It's insane, isn't it, Dad? And it's like everyone saw it coming, or at least everyone in our in our sort of neck of the woods saw it coming.
Well, it's one of those things, Gaz, where people with any intelligence would say, how do you think that's going to end up? And also, what could possibly go wrong? You have a vaccine that has minimal trials, in fact, so minimal trials, you don't even call them trials, that's given emergency approval, which was always going to happen, and they roll it out. And then people start collapsing. Of course, a nurse collapsed after having the vaccine on live television, which was a PR disaster. She's had the COVID vaccine, and then she's talking to the media about it, and promoting it, and all the other staff are going to have it, and then within a few seconds she collapsed, and you've got other people who are suffering allergic reactions, including some that have no history of allergies. And so what you have is a PR disaster already, and it's only just started to be used on the population. And of course, for every nurse that collapses on live television, how many other people are having really bad reactions that you're never going to hear about? And what we're also seeing this week, if it was possible, but it seems to be so, is an even greater extension of censorship on the social media giants about anyone questioning or exposing the vaccine. And so what you've got is these all-powerful corporations, this all-powerful global cult that owns the corporations, that are so desperate now, and it is desperation, that they are running around trying to put fires out about the vaccine, the PR disasters. But what's going to happen? This is going to continue to go on. And it's pathetic to behold the scale of censorship now which is only there to protect the cult Gates vaccine that is damaging people and causing people to collapse and great distress. Now, if you are going to systematically, coldly suppress information that would alert people, give them informed consent about the consequences potentially of this vaccine for them, then there's no other description for you than a psychopath. And in terms of Zuckerberg at Facebook and Dorsey at Twitter and Wojcicki at YouTube, Brin and Page at YouTube parent company, Google and Alphabet, they are facilitators of fascism, and there's no way in the world that they are doing that unknowingly. And they, like so many others, must go to jail for the rest of their bloody lives when humanity comes to its senses and takes control back of its world.
The bit that got me, Dad, so I sent you the story that I saw of the nurse that ended up in intensive care after the vaccine, right? So when you read the article, it says, because obviously they've got to control the narrative, so crap, like she's collapsed, she's in intensive care, but the nurse, whilst in intensive care, still said she's glad she had it, right? And it made me laugh, because I just thought of the idea that, okay, so you're a nurse, so you're a frontliner, so you've been on the front line of COVID for 9 months, right? Deadly disease. You've not got it for 9 months. You've not got ill. But after 5 minutes of the vaccine, you're in intensive care, right? But you're still glad you had it. You're still glad you had the vaccine to protect you from the deadly virus that put you in intensive care when the deadly virus didn't make you ill. I was laughing because I was just thinking it's like me stepping out in the road, getting hit by a car, and it being on the news and going, we spoke to Gareth in intensive care. He said he's still glad he stepped out in the road. Do you know what I mean?
Well, of course, two things. We're talking a form of mental illness. Absolutely, we are. If you define mental illness as the brain's inability to process information in the way that it was made to do, then we are living in amidst enormous amounts of mental illness. Because if people haven't worked out now that they're being scammed, and a vaccine that has had no testing worth the name has been rolled out in record time, given emergency approval, then if you haven't worked out that that could be dangerous for you, then I say that's a form of mental illness. If you haven't worked out after all these months that you're being scammed on a scale that beggars belief, with all the social distancing and masks and house arrest, then that's a form, I say, of mental illness, defined as the inability to process information in a balanced, rational, mature way. But the other thing is, of course, with the healthcare workers, is they have jobs, and there is enormous pressure on them to conform. This is why those who have spoken out and refused to conform are such incredible people with great courage and a sense of proper duty to the public and public health. And so you're going to have people pressured into having the vaccine on live television, and it's nothing to do with what benefits them. They're just fodder to these people. It's to do with trying to scam the public into having a vaccine that's clearly very, very potentially dangerous. And what they've done, and you can start to see this now, and in World Health Organization documents, this was preceded by the plan to use celebrities God help us, to promote the vaccine to get people to have it. Now, I don't know if Ian McKellen or Gandalf is part of that, or whether he's just doing it off his own bat. I don't know. But he had this vaccine. Of course, all the cameras were there to record it. And he said he was euphoric at having the vaccine. And he recommended and urged people to have it as well. So he's euphoric about a vaccine he is clueless about, knows nothing about except what the authorities have told him. And that's fair enough. If you want to do that, Mr. McKellen, you know, be my guest. It's a free country. Oh, well, it used to be. But to urge other people to have it on the basis of him being vaccinated while knowing nothing about it except what the authorities have told him is appalling in my view. And you see lots of these celebrities coming out of the woodwork. Oh yeah, have the vaccine. Well, I think that mature, adult, awake people will make their own choice, thank you very much, and don't need some celebrity, many of them airhead celebrities, to tell them what to do, especially as it affects their health and their life. And if you're a celebrity that is promoting this for personal reasons, for image reasons, for virtue signaling reasons, or whatever other reason you can come up with, then you are pathetic and a disgrace in terms of the public's right to make its own choice and be informed about what is claimed to be the benefits of the vaccine, brackets, nil, and what are claimed to be the potential consequences, and it's not even claimed anymore because we're seeing them already.
I'm annoyed that I didn't have Gandalf in the vaccine celebrity bingo. So congratulations to whoever had Gandalf. I saw something actually which just sums up, like you were talking about the definition of mental illness. I saw something day before yesterday where there was a news story on Twitter and it was about the vaccine. And so people were commenting, and this lady commented, and from her profile picture, I'd put her probably about my age, so late 30s. So I'm assuming she must be a healthcare professional, otherwise she wouldn't obviously be eligible for the vaccine yet. And she was saying she'd gone into the doctors to get the vaccine, and the doctor had explained to her, so he's obviously actually a decent doctor, he'd gone through and gone, well, actually, with your, you know, with your health situation, so, you know, you've got these allergies, X, Y, and Z, you should absolutely not be having it at all, right? It's bad for you. She then was saying how gutted she was that a doctor wouldn't let her have it. Gutted, she said. And I was thinking, he saved your life, mate. But it's that mental illness of, I want it, you know, and even when someone says to you, actually, it could kill you if you have it, you go, but I still want it. What for something that hasn't killed you in 9 months? Like, what are you talking about? Is it absolute madness? And it is a mental illness, you're right. But anyway.
When I talk about mental illness, it is a expression of extreme perceptual programming to the point where the brain is almost firewalled, and not even almost, it is firewalled off from the ability to process information on the basis of that information. You know, in China, they firewall off the computer system. So the computer system will not read great chunks of the internet that the Chinese fascist communist government does not want them to see. And it's the same with the brain. And I've talked to people who are specialists in this area and said, look, this is my feeling, that people are being perceptually firewalled. So literally their brain will not process information and come to certain conclusions. You know, when people say, I can't get my head around it, that's exactly the description of what's going on. And these specialists have said, well, that's possible. It is possible to do that because, you know, you stimulate certain parts of the brain, like you use a muscle, then you will stimulate that muscle. that part of the brain. But if you don't use parts of the body or parts of the brain, then they can basically become dormant to the extent that they don't do their job properly. And when I look at so many people, the evidence, people watching this who are coming from an awake perspective will understand exactly what I mean. You can put any level of evidence in front of many, many people. It doesn't matter what it is, how compelling it is, what proof it is, they will not process it. They will hang on to their programmed perception. And we're seeing this all the time, and it is a form of firewalling off the brain. So it doesn't process information in particular ways, and therefore certain perceptions, certain conclusions, certain seeing through the crap simply won't be processed by the brain. And it's very, very obvious now as we see this parting of the ways between those who have some control of their own mind and so many that don't.
That makes so much sense to me, because there's a lot of, especially recently, a lot of times over the last 9 months where I have actually just like pulled that face when someone's been like not getting it. It's like, how can you not see that? Like, it's right there. And what I find a lot as well, and then obviously then we'll move on, is the idea that you point stuff out to people and it's so obvious. And it's like, the bus driver's driven his bus into your house and it's there's a bus in your house. And their reaction is, why would the bus driver drive the bus into my house? That's not the question to be asking. There's the bus in your house. Have a look at it. And it's very odd, but there you go anyway. So moving on to the Christmas star, Dad. As I said at the start, like I do find astrology fascinating, but I know very little. And I'm sure I'm in the majority in that I know very little about astrology and how it works. So I'm hoping you're going to tell me.
Well, the thing is, Gaz, that, I've watched this week a lot of videos by astrologers about this great conjunction, as they're calling it, also calling it the Christmas star, which is a alignment, a very rare alignment in the detail of what is going to happen. On the winter solstice, the shortest day, the darkest day, on Monday, the 21st of December. And it's an alignment between Jupiter and Saturn, which has not happened in this exact way since 1226, actually March the 4th, 1226, I read. And they're going to come within 0.1 of a degree, some say 0 degrees, they're bloody close. And what people are going to see, and apparently you can see it with the naked eye, is they're going to come so close that they appear to be one light or one planet. But as I've written in the books over the years, and I've written so extensively about Saturn in the books over the years, not least in Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, because Saturn, as I'll come to, is an absolute center of the ritual belief system and the rituals of the global cult, the death cult, as it really is. And so I'll talk as we go along about what the impact of this is supposed to be. But I was saying, we talk about the planet Jupiter and the planet Saturn. I don't think they're planets at all. I think they're a form of star. In fact, as we'll get into later on, there is tremendous evidence that actually Saturn at one point was a sun, a form of sun for the Earth, and the Earth had a twin sun system, which many ancient legends say it did. And that great cataclysms eventually put Saturn where it is now. Because you've got to think about this. Saturn is a central god of so many ancient cultures, not least the culture of Rome, as again I'll come to. So, but why would Saturn be such a focus if it was where it is now? Without telescopes, I won't be able to see it in any detail. But they were absolutely obsessed with it, and there's a reason for that, because it weren't where it is now then. Anyway, that will unfold as we go on. But one of the things that I see with astrology, and when people talk about astrology, is it's never, or so rarely, I very rarely if ever see it explained. What is it? How do we get affected by the movements of planets and stars in the heavens? Because a lot of people go, astrology, what? What's all that about? You know, the planet moves and it affects your bloody life. I mean, don't be daft. And it kind of needs explaining so that people can see actually that if you read your horoscope in the morning paper, yes, that's a load of crap. But if you go deeply, deeply into it, astrology becomes a science of reading energy, and that energy is actually consciousness, and that consciousness is information. And so if we just take the bigger picture of this, everything in this reality, whether it's the human body, whether it's Jupiter, Saturn, or any other heavenly body, is an energetic field of consciousness. It is an energetic field of information, waveform information in its base form. Think Wi-Fi. Now, what is Wi-Fi? It's a radiation field of information, which the computer reads and turns into another form on the screen. So we are an information field, and the planets and stars are information fields. They're unique information fields in and of themselves. And we are all of us existing in a sea of energy, consciousness, information. Again, think Wi-Fi. If I had Wi-Fi here now, and I said to people that knew nothing about computers or Wi-Fi that there is a field of information and in this room, and this computer can lock into it and turn it onto the screen in another form. If people knew nothing about computers or anything, they'd say you were crazy. That's impossible. Where is this field? I can't see it. But because people do know now about computers and Wi-Fi, when you say the same thing to them, they go, oh yeah, Wi-Fi, computers, I know all about that. And the only difference between that's nonsense and, oh yeah, I know all about that, is knowledge. That's all it is. And what we are living in is I call it the cosmic internet. It's a field of energy information that connects everything. And if you want to affect all the fish or life in the sea at the same time, then what do? Do you try to affect every different fish? Of course not. You affect the sea, and then all the life within the sea is affected. That's precisely the basis of astrology. Because as the planets and stars and constellations, etc., are moving through their cycle, they are impacting upon this field in ways that change the nature of the field. And when you have certain alignments and certain what they call conjunctions and trines and all these things that astrologers talk about, when you have these sequences where planets, stars, etc., come together in certain alignments, the impact on the field of the sum total of those alignments is far, far greater than the individual impact on the field of just individual planets, etc. And therefore, that's why these astrological alignments are very powerful. And when we're born, some say when at the point of conception, we take on, in part of our energetic makeup, an energetic imprint of the field at that moment. And that field at that moment will have been impacted by where the planets, etc., are at the moment of birth or conception, some say too. And so if you're born like I was, April the 29th, 1952, then I've taken on a certain imprint of the field as it was at that moment on April the 29th, 1952. So I will go through my life and be affected by the changing nature of the field caused by the changing nature and movements of the planets and stars in a different way to someone who is born on September the 25th, because they will have taken on an imprint of the field as it was at that moment that is different to the one I took on. And this is where all these different zodiac signs come in. And so when you have a big conjunction like Saturn and Jupiter, that are not only the biggest so-called planets, but are tremendously impacting upon the field, then you're going to have changes in the field which are going to affect people. And that's what astrology is about. It's about reading the effects of those changes. And so, you know, I've met so many astrologers over the years, some famous, some not famous, who have been on retainers to the CEOs, etc., of major global corporations. Because this cult knows this stuff. It understands this stuff. And they are on retainers to give them the best astrological time to make a takeover bid, to launch a product, whatever. And at the inner core of the cult, astrology is absolutely at the center of much of what they do. And it's a simple thing. As the planets and stars affect the field, and they affect it in different ways because they're unique contributions to the field, because they're unique expressions of consciousness themselves, information. There are times when certain things are going to flow easily because the energy is flowing in support of what you want to do. And there are certain times when it's a bad time because the energies are not flowing as in the direction that you want to go and the things you want to do. And it's very simple, or a very simple analogy, is if you are wanting to paddle canoe out into the sea, are you going to choose it when the tide's coming in and against you? Or are you going to do it when the tide's going out and with you? And these are the flows of energy that true astrologers, skilled astrologers, are reading. And you know, Gaz, it goes back right into the ancient world. Astrology has been charted back to, you know, like 2,400 years to ancient Babylon. Ancient Babylon, which of course was a massive stepping stone into the modern world for the global cult. And in Egypt and these ancient cultures, they were aware of the impact of the movement of the heavenly bodies upon human behavior, human experience, human society. And that's a basic explanation of how astrology works and why it impacts upon us.
What is the cult's obsession with Saturn? And I don't even mean like going back to ancient world and Saturnalia and all this sort of stuff. I mean like now, because Saturn's symbolism is everywhere. It's everywhere. And as soon as you realize that, I see it on the daily, whether it's on, well, a lot of the time on company logos, big companies, they use Saturn symbolism all the time. I think CBS News is a huge one as well, because that's like an all-seeing eye as well as a Saturn thing. It's like it's everywhere. So what is their obsession with it?
Well, I've written about this extensively over the years, and the Saturn foundation of so much of the ritualistic belief system of the cult. And as you say, I've been highlighting the symbols that are all around us that are symbolizing Saturn. The cube, particularly the black cube, is Saturn. What is in the famous mosque in Saudi Arabia, Mecca? It's a black cube. The black cube is the symbol of El, which is the god of Saturn, in Judaistic belief. So you have Is-Ra-El. Another symbol of Saturn, which is everywhere, is the six-pointed star, the hexagram, which of course is on the flag of Israel, and it was put there by the Rothschilds, because the Rothschilds are actually named after that Saturn symbol. In their home in Frankfurt, where the Rothschilds came out of, they were called Bauer. They were a Middle Ages occult family that changed their name to Rothschild. Why? Because on their home in Frankfurt was a red shield, which in German is Rothschild, Rothschild. And what was the red shield? It was a six-pointed star, which is now on the flag of Israel, which was created by the Rothschilds. And you have the holy day of Judaism is Saturday. Saturn Day is what it's named after. And the astrological reading of Saturn in its most extreme expression is authority, rule, limitation, imposition upon. And so that is the energy, of course, the vibration, the frequency that the cult operates on. In ancient Greece, they had the Saturn god was Cronus. And Cronus was depicted as an old man with a long beard. We now call that figure Old Father Time. In astrology, what does Saturn rule? Time, as it rules karma. In other words, you reap what you sow, etc., cause and effect. And so the energy of Saturn in its that extreme level is absolutely the energy of the cult. And, you know, I said that you can take astrology back to ancient Babylon, take it back before that, I'm sure, but certainly to Babylon. And this cult kind of emerged in different parts of the world, and then it fused together as one global cult. But you can pick up a massive stream of it in ancient Babylon. They then moved to Rome, and this cult created Rome, as we know ancient Rome, which became the Roman Empire. And eventually the cult centered itself in Britain. It's still very much in Rome, in the Vatican, but it centered itself in Britain. And what did you have? The British Empire, which took the cult all over the world. And it started to take the world over. And of course, you had a Babylonian Empire, etc. And if you go to Rome, ancient Rome, the chief god of Rome was Saturn. And they used to have a festival called Saturnalia, which was in the run-up to the winter solstice. That's why it's very significant that this alignment on Monday is happening at the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. And so where did Christmas come from? It came from Saturnalia, the worship of Saturn, because Saturnalia involved trees, decorating trees, exchanging gifts, holly. This is where Christmas comes from. It comes from Saturnalia, the worship of Saturn. In Rome, I've been there myself. There's still the ruins in Rome today of the Temple of Saturn. And this was the cult on its journey from ancient Babylon through Rome into Europe and then the world. It's very much an expression of the cult, the energy of Saturn, in this extreme, oppressive, rule, control manner that astrologers read Saturn.
What do you think happens on the 21st of December? Because I'm excited by it. Like, you know, I've heard lots of things and lots of positive things, like an awakening, a shift of consciousness. You know, I might be talking nonsense. I'm just saying what I've heard. Like that, almost like the veil will be lifted for many, which I'm dead excited about. Because my God, do we need it? What do you think happens?
Well, I would say all of the above, and possibly things that are not like that at all, because in the end, it's a choice. And I think this is what a lot of people lose with astrology. The field is affected by the movement of the planets. And because we live in the field, we are part of the field, we are affected by it. But we have our own ace card, which most people never use, which is our own power of consciousness, our own power to influence the field by our own perceptions, emotions, thoughts, ideas, etc. And also not to be influenced by the field and its impact upon us. Of course, we're all influenced in some way, but I mean, you know, if you don't use your mind and the power of consciousness, then you basically become a puppet to these changes in the field that astrological impacts make happen. But if you're in your own power, you realize that you are a powerful consciousness in and of yourself, then you can at least mitigate the impacts upon you that you would rather not have. So what we're actually looking at, Gaz, and this is a real powerful month, December 2020, and coming at the end of this incredible year of 2020, I don't think that's an accident. We've had the solar eclipse on the 14th of December. And now we're moving into this great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. And look at it. Just look at the different energies that are coming into, well, they can come into harmony or they can come into conflict, depending on the way that we interact with them. So let's just go through, I made some notes here about the astrological impacts of Jupiter, of Saturn, and a very, very important point. The ancients, and of course still today, in Western astrology I'm talking about, Vedic astrology coming out of India, would read this in a slightly different way, maybe even a very different way. But this is Western astrology I'm talking about. And they break up the heavens into segments which the planets move through. And we call these star signs. And very significantly, if you look at what is said to be the energetic nature of that area called Aquarius, Jupiter and Saturn are coming into this alignment in that area of the heavens known as Aquarius. And Saturn enters Aquarius first, and then just before the winter solstice, Jupiter follows. So let's look at Jupiter first. This is the astrological reading of the energetic effect of Jupiter. Jupiter is a planet of plenty and seeks insight through knowledge. Some of this planet's key words include morality, gratitude, hope, honor, and the law. Jupiter is a planet of broader purpose, reach, and possibility. Jupiter has generally been associated with good luck and bounty, optimism and growth, including mental and spiritual growth. Jupiter is associated with a sense of humor, goodwill, and mercy. The more negative manifestations of Jupiter include blind optimism, excess and overindulgence, irresponsibility that results from blind optimism, not ill will, can be displayed. So that's a kind of an expansive, it's the sort of thing you were just talking about, Gaz, that you've heard the effect of this is going to be. And then you've got Saturn. Saturn is associated with restriction and limitation. Where Jupiter expands, Saturn constricts. And as one astrologer I was watching this week said, Jupiter says yes, Saturn says no. Saturn energy is associated with limitation, restrictions, boundaries, practical reality, which is a very positive aspect of Saturn. If you are like, expansive and off with the fairies and not got your feet on the ground, and you say we want change, well, without the feet on the ground, the practicality represented by Saturn energy, okay, you want to change? Okay, yeah. So how are you going to do it? How are you practically going to do it? And this is why these energies are about balance and getting the best of both and not going off just dominated by one in a state of imbalance, whether it's fierce authoritarian control or whether it's off with the fairies. So Saturn energy is associated with authority, and that's why the global cult is so obsessed with it, or one reason. And I noted this, the first century poet Manilius described Jupiter as temperate and benign, and the greater benefic. Benefic comes from the Greek term meaning good doer. Jupiter was regarded as warm in nature and therefore favorable to life. But Manilius, by contrast, dubbed Saturn as sad, morose, and cold, and the greater malefic. Malefic in this context meaning a planet believed to bring bad luck and misfortune to those born within its area of impact. So you've got this alignment of energies which are basically very different. And you can go that way with Saturn. That's where we've been all the way through 2020. The Saturn energy, a look, control, imposition, authority. Or you can go with the Jupiter energy, which is very different, or you can balance the two so that you can demand change, but also have the practicality of how that change is made manifest. And then we come to Aquarius. Now, somebody like me, who grew up in the 60s, I was born in 52, but my teenage years were in the 60s. We were brought up with the age of Aquarius, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. There was a song by a group called Fifth Dimension, which was about that. And the words said, reflecting Aquarian energy astrologically, harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding, no more falsehoods or derisions, golden living dreams of visions, mystic crystal revelation, and the mind's true liberation. Aquarius, Aquarius. So it went. And so the astrological reading of the Aquarian energy is the visionary, change, new ideas, optimism, freedom, and rebellion. So you can see all these things coming in. And what the heavens are doing is reflecting human society, cause and effect. We're talking about again, because what we are looking at is exactly this situation where you've got authority wishing to impose its will more and more fiercely and fascistically, and that now you've got more and more people saying, we're not having it, we want freedom, we want change that leads to freedom. 2021 is going to be a year of enormous upheaval and challenge as the demand for freedom meets the agenda of total control. And an astrologer I was watching this week said of Aquarius, the blinders are, and this whole great conjunction, the blinders are going to be taken off the collective, and we are going to see more truth than we've seen in a very long time. Yes. And Aquarius is about new beginnings and change. And this is where I would add a note of caution. Because what is the change that the cult wants? It wants the great reset. That is change. And it's not freedom. It's the very opposite of freedom. And because this inner circle of the cult is so aware of these astrological energies and their effect, it is going to seek to channel demand for change, not least in the woke mentality, into a change that suits the cult. And it's up to those that can see it to demand freedom in its true sense, and also to cease to cooperate with anything that seeks to take that freedom away. So it's going to be an interesting year, because these energies represented by this conjunction are not just in a moment. If people think everything's going to change in a moment, that's not the way it works. It starts a flow which starts to change things, but over a period. And the astrologers are talking about the fact that the effect of this and the cycle that it starts is going to go on for years, and indeed over a long period, even 200 years. If you see how they're pointing out that Saturn and Jupiter and what's going to happen over that 200 years with them. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least, to see what happens and to impact on what happens during 2021 and beyond.
You mentioned at the start about a great catastrophe with Saturn, where Saturn was a twin sun. What's the ancient accounts of that?
Well, this is fascinating. I've written about this at length in the books because it's very significant, very, very significant. You can see in the books of people like Immanuel Velikovsky, who wrote extensively, kind of in the 1950s and that period, about what he said was a great catastrophe in the heavens, where there was basically a redrawing of where many planets were and the cycles that they were on. And in the more and in the more modern world, I would recommend the work of David Tolbert, who's a researcher in America, and he wrote a fabulous book. Unfortunately, unfortunately, the last time I looked, it wasn't in print, and the cost of buying one was very, very high. It's a book that should be back in print, and it's called The Saturn Myth. And what David did was go all over the world to all these ancient cultures, and in all parts of the world, the different continents, and he looked at what these ancient beliefs and legends said about Saturn. And the common themes were extraordinary. And from that, he's able to explain what so much ancient symbolism really means that wasn't clear before. And if you go on the internet, you can see a YouTube video, or a series of them, I think, by David Talbot about what happened in the not fantastically distant past, not hundreds or tens of thousands of years ago, much more recently, where Saturn and the sun that we know now were a twin sun system for the Earth. And when you looked up from the Earth, Saturn was actually the prime source of light. And even today, Saturn, like Jupiter, gives off more energy that it receives from the sun. But Saturn went through this catastrophe, which I could say detail in the books, whereby there was a massive upheaval in the heavens. There was a big interaction, not least electrical interaction between Mars and the Earth. And the Earth just about held on. And when you look at the ancient descriptions of this happening, they are again compelling in their common themes of amazing upheavals on the Earth when the Earth nearly died. There is a book I read a long time ago by two researchers called When the Earth Nearly Died, in which they looked at the geological and biological evidence to be found on the Earth now, and compared that with the ancient myths and legends talking about this catastrophe, and the two sync perfectly. And so if we go back to the astrology, if you've got Saturn much closer to the Earth than it is now, and you've got all these impacts on the field of these planets that were in different positions then when this catastrophe happened and everything rearranged itself, then the nature of the field would have changed. Of course it would. Because the impact on the field of the planets would have changed because they were in different positions and therefore affecting it in different ways. So there was a shift at that time in the consciousness, if you like, of the Earth, which would have impacted on the consciousness of humanity. And when you read ancient accounts, humanity before then was a different humanity to what it's become. Anyway, this explains why Saturn was such a focus in the far ancient world and continued to be so through myths and legends. Because instead of being where it is now, who would have focused on Saturn where it is now in the ancient world? Instead of where it is now, it was right there as a sun for the Earth. And as a result, obviously, became the focus, became a god. And this continued with examples like the god of Rome was Saturn, and Kronos, the Saturn god of Greece, El, the Saturn god of Judaism. So the world is not like we think it is. And a lot has happened that we're not being told about. And I hope and trust that humanity is now entering what some of these astrologers are actually calling the age of Aquarius, which made me laugh because they were talking about that in the 60s, that this was the age of Aquarius, we're just going into it. But they're saying, well, actually, you know, many of them are saying, oh yeah, this is now the age of Aquarius. Well, whatever. I trust that we're entering an age where even more of the veil is going to lift, and people are going to realize not only that their history is bunkum in the way that they've been told, but their perception of the self and the world they've been told is also bunkum and has been written precisely to keep them in a state of ignorance, which allows the cult to violin the many and therefore dictate their lives. We are now entering an era. Now the cults come into the room and becomes more and more undeniable to more and more people. Now we have a chance to unravel this and bring an end to this cult's manipulation of human society, which goes back thousands and thousands of years. And it's going to be interesting watching it unfold.